Even outside the scope of enthusiasts, Porsche is a symbol of status and performance. Nothing short of iconic, the Stuttgart-based manufacturer remains prevalent after decades of pursuing perfection on four wheels. Known for their tried-and-true format of a continually produced definitive sports car, Porsche stands out in the automotive industry. So, as someone who speaks so highly of Porsche, someone who declares them second to none, it may seem counterintuitive that I state in this video they have fallen from grace. In this episode of Sci, I break down the love-hate relationship between Porsche and automotive enthusiasts. I show the innate problems of Porsche's decisions, coming from an enthusiast myself who was near obsessed with the manufacturer. It's time to share my beliefs regarding the inner workings of the best of what German engineering has to offer. Welcome to Sci. Ferdinand Porsche established his eponymous company in 1931. The marque built no cars initially. Instead, it commenced with the German government's assignment for Ferdinand, which was to create a car for the people. Porsche put pen to paper and left the production to Volkswagen. Ferdinand Porsche designed the Volkswagen Beetle and its military version, the Kübelwagen. After the war's terminality, Ferdinand's son crafted the 356, Porsche's first automobile. It was based off of the Beetle down to the chassis and motor. Most important to be noted, the Beetle was the people's car, small, economical, and practical by the standards of the late 30s. With this layout birthed the hallmark of the Beetle, the rear engine configuration, the air-cooled boxer sitting behind the rear axle driving the rear wheels. As a result, the 356 was rear-engined. Still regarded as a brilliant sports car, the 356 drew origin from the Beetle and therefore its limitations. However, most people, even among car enthusiasts, don't know about the 356. With its production spanning from 1948 until 1964, the 356 received many variations across its 16-year lifespan. This includes 3 facelifts, displacement ranging from 1.1 all the way to 2 liters, a cabriolet, the iconic Speedster, the 4-seater long wheelbase 530, and many motorsport versions. Year after year, Porsche would continually work at their sports car design and improve on their creation with additional variants. An undeniable integral piece of sports car history, rivaled only by the Mercedes 300 SL. This model worked for Porsche. Steady improvement of one format proved to be functional. Seeing the success of this design, Porsche began working on a successor. Based on sketches drawn by the grandson of Ferdinand Porsche himself, Porsche got to work on the 356 descendant. Nevertheless, the next vehicle was not to be a replacement to the 356. Despite that the 356 would exit production, they were to be a continuation of the same ethos. Thus, in 1964, the 911 was born. All 911s were and still are produced in Stuttgart, Germany. The original 911, commonly known as the 901, was Porsche's next passion project. It was made to be a slightly larger, but much more powerful and comfortable version of the 356. It established itself as a grand tour to continue what the 356 began. Like its predecessor, the 901 had an extensive range of variants. It came along with entry-level, mid-range, and top-of-the-line models, as even more series models joined the mix. Overall, the 901 was on the production line for a staggering quarter century, ending in 1989 alongside the 930, commencing as the flagship 911 first introduced in 1975. Its many variations and frequent entrance into the motorsports scene made this generation of 911 ultimately the most successful competition car. Homologated and bespoke models both by Porsche themselves and private teams reached all corners of racing, from rally to track and everything in between. The 911's ultimate beginning is what established it as a sports car that means business under all definitions. What was becoming an iconic vehicle had merit behind its name, from a brand committed to their ideologies. These beginnings created what the 911 was to become even decades in the future. The trail was paved for the 911 to continue into further days as their habits of the sports car were cemented. The 911 undoubtedly drew all of its characteristics from the now beloved 356. The iconic circle headlights are just a hint of continued design language. The 901 shared near everything with the 356 beyond styling, most notably an air-cooled boxer engine sitting behind the rear axle, driving the rear wheels. Besides the higher engine cylinder count, the 901 sips the same formula as its predecessor. This began the cycle of what continues to this day. As of today, the 911 has gone through 8 generations. We already covered the 901 and the 930, which bring us to 1989. Following the 930's 14-year run, the 964 was introduced for 5 model years. It was the 911 of the 90s, followed by the 993 in 1995. The 993 lasted a brief 4 model years until things began to change in 1999 with the introduction of the 996. With a dramatically restyled body, this 911 was different. It wasn't just the styling that brewed up a storm. No longer was the flat 6 in the back an air-cooled engine. Porsche had now switched to a water-cooled motor. Additionally, the 996 shared its looks with a completely new model to Porsche's lineup, the Boxster. First hitting production in 1996, the Porsche Boxster was a 2-seat roadster, Porsche's first vehicle designed from the ground up as a roadster since the 914 in 1969. At a glance, these two 90s Porsches may seem identical, but there is a major difference besides price point between the two that sparked what would become a massive dilemma for Porsche. While we know the 911 is famously rear-engined, the Boxster was a mid-engine car, ideal for achieving much better weight distribution. Contrary to this, all 911s have the majority of their weight in the back half of the car. The front may turn in very easily due to less weight, but upon deceleration, the heavy back end starts to swing around to try to catch up to the front. The 930 was most prone to this issue, famously making the roof CTR the widowmaker, but inherently all rear-engined rear-wheel drive cars will suffer from poor weight distribution and will be more likely to experience snap oversteer. The Boxster and the non-roadster variant released later, the Cayman, do not have this problem. As a result, this platform would be a better performer than the 911. However, they are not. Porsche has decided to keep the 911 at the top of the range, simply due to the fact that it is so deeply seated in their history. Having the relatively newly developed Cayman, a mid-engine car, steal the thunder from the 911 as Porsche's best performer would be sacrilege. As a result, across all generations and model years of the Cayman and Boxster, the 911 always had more power from the factory. The Boxster and more performance-oriented Cayman never even matched the horsepower output of the 911 in their corresponding lineup. This was not due to mechanical limitation. Over the near countless iterations and variants of the 911, many different engines have been used to give the 911 its neck-breaking performance. The best example of this comes from the 991 generation, the 911 from 2011 to 2019. Porsche's no-compromised highest performance track version of the 911 is given a simple additional name, GT3. For the GT3 variants of any 911 since the 996 in 1999, Porsche subtracted as much weight possible and focused on ultimate power output and downforce to craft a track weapon. These cars were naturally aspirated to create the most power from a low-displacement flat-6 engine with no forced induction. But before the GT3 variant of the 996, there was the GT2 of the 993. Ever since then, except for the 992, the most current 911, the GT2 was simply a GT3 with turbochargers. So, the top performer of the 911 range for any model year since 1995 has been a GT2 RS. Each generation since then has had a GT2 version which has one focus: take the 911 platform, put in as much power as possible with turbos, give it all the racing addition it needs for the best track performance humanly possible. In all of Porsche's efforts, only the 911 received the treatment of such race-bred beginning. The rest of their lineup sat idly by while the 911 claimed all of their racing prowess. The top achievements of the 991 GT2 and GT3 RS cars is their lap time on the Nürburgring. Arguably one of the most infamous raceways in motorsport history, the Nürburgring has been used to test and race nearly any performance car that rolls off the production line. A public list of lap times set by manufacturers and their corresponding vehicles is available on the internet and is often used to determine the capability and sheer speed of any car. Currently, the 991.2 GT2 RS with the MR Performance Racing Kit is the second fastest street legal car to lap the Nürburgring at 6 minutes 38 seconds. When it achieved this time, it claimed the fastest lap until it was dethroned in November 2022 by the Mercedes-AMG 1, a 1 of 275 hypercar costing $2.7 million US. After all the 911's racing history, Porsche has made the decision to reserve its best motorsport technology, the RS treatment, for the 911 and the 911 only. This was not a problem until Porsche introduced a new performance-oriented car to their lineup that is not the 911. Porsche's lineup today consists of 5 models besides the 911. The Panamera, the luxurious 4-door sedan. The Taycan, Porsche's take on an electric saloon. The Macan, a quaint crossover. The Cayenne, a full-size SUV. And finally, the aforementioned Cayman and Boxster, also referred to as the 718. While each of these models have their own top-of-the-range versions, none of them are nearly as track-focused as the 911 RS cars, with one recent exception. The mid-engine Cayman finally received an RS variant. Officially titled as the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 RS, this car is the RS version of the GT4 Cayman, which is an incredible car in its own right. The GT4 RS shares its engine with a 992 GT3, squeezing out 493 horsepower at 8,500 RPM. The 992 GT3 RS is 20 seconds faster around the Nürburgring than the GT4 RS. Despite there being only a 25 horsepower difference between the two cars, this gap is a result of Porsche's favoritism. The 992 GT3 RS is a massive aerodynamic redesign over the previous GT3. At any angle, you will see the extensive additions to make this car as slippery and track capable as it is. Taking a glance at the GT4 RS, it is obvious that Porsche did not put in their all to make it a true competitor as an RS car. They had the chance to create a true track weapon out of their mid-engine example, but intentionally made it fall short of the GT3 RS. They did this with less performance technology compared to the GT3, including fewer aerodynamic additions, a non-electronic differential, and with McPherson struts for suspension all around as opposed to the double wishbone in front and multi-link in back of the GT3. Porsche has the technology and ability to make the Cayman outpace the 911 as it should, but they will not let it overtake their crown jewel. The MR package for the GT4 RS managed to shave off a few seconds, locking in a 6 minutes 58. Only 1 second slower than the 918 Spider, Porsche's limited production $1.7 million supercar. With the MR package, the GT4 RS is the 15th fastest car around the ring, outpacing the non-MR 991.2 GT2 RS. The 493 horsepower GT4 RS was able to be within 20 seconds of the 690 horsepower 991.2 GT2 RS MR. If Porsche committed to the Cayman as they do the 911, they could claim back their crown around the ring, beating the AMG 1, but they will not. The Cayman is going electric for the 2024 model year, and it's safe to say that the EV counterpart to the 718 will not be a competitive track car. Therefore, the GT4 RS, while still an amazing car, is only a near masterpiece. The innate problem of the 911's rear-engine layout contributes to its diminishing value of a sports car heavily, but even beyond that, the 911 has a further problem. Across all generations, there are well over 1 million Porsche 911s that have rolled off the production line. For such a high-value Grand Touring car, that is a ginormous quantity. Remember how the 356 had a lot of variants and versions? Each 911 generation has had even more, getting progressively higher. If you would like to customize or build your own 992 for the 2023 Porsche 911 today, you are greeted by an extensive array of body styles. Let's take a count. The Carrera, the Carrera T, the Carrera Cabriolet, the Carrera 4, the Carrera 4 Cabriolet, the Carrera S, the Carrera S Cabriolet, the Carrera 4S, the Carrera 4S Cabriolet, the Targa 4, the Targa 4S, the Carrera GTS, the GTS Cabriolet, the Carrera 4 GTS, the Carrera 4 GTS Cabriolet, the Targa 4 GTS, the 50 Years Edition, the Turbo Cabriolet, the Turbo S Cabriolet, the GT3, the GT3 Touring, the GT3 RS, the Sport Classic, and the Dakar. Whew, that is 26 available body styles to customize. After you pick one of these, the additional extras you can spec and therefore tick up the window sticker are ridiculous. For any given model, you can alter so much for the interior and exterior design and colors. It gets so specific that you can even customize the color of the deviated stitching on the leather of your personalized owner's manual cover pouch. And that's not all for that item. You can change the color of various parts of the logo and the texture and color of the inside material and so much more just for this one thing, and this extends to everything else for interior customization, where extensive personalization is present for any given 911, even the stripped down interior of the GT3 and RS. You may ask, how could this possibly be a flaw of the car? Well, it's rather simple. When an enthusiast sees or looks at a 911, the first thing that they think about is the spec of the car. What seats does it have? What color are they? Does it have the Sport Chrono package? What wheels does it have? Which color? Which paint does it have? Is this the body style I like? Does it have good stitching? So on and so forth, down to the nitty-gritty. No longer do people get wowed by a 911 they see driving down the road. Instead, they analyze the spec and criticize it or praise it for that alone.
So many Porsches now are focused on the spec. Nice spec, but your spec is so good. You get spec. What about driving? What about driving the car?
There are too many 911s, and they are too personalizable to be desirable by enthusiasts anymore. The appeal of the car has been subtracted and diluted to the minute details available from the factory.
All the Porsche people with this, they're stitching enthusiasts, I call them, with their Porsches and their watches, and they just care about how things look and not how things drive.
Doug DeMuro famously calls these 911 owners and fans stitch enthusiasts because the appeal of the 911 now only surrounds the customizations and not the car itself. And it isn't perfect in its own right. The 911 that receives the most attention is undoubtedly the GT3 RS alongside the turbocharged 991 counterpart, the GT2 RS. The claim to fame for these variants is their high power, accompanied with the weight reduction in every possible area to maximize performance, as we know. For these models, Porsche will stop at nothing to maximize lightness. It can be basic things like seats fixed in place, no air conditioning, and wheels made from magnesium, but it even goes so far as to using a sticker or decal as the Porsche logo on the car instead of a badge. Most famously, Porsche ditches conventional interior door handles in favor of fabric straps. As a result, a once grand touring car has a lack of creature comforts, reducing its luxury in the name of performance. This is massively prevalent in the GT3, but another model in the lineup also suffers from this, the Carrera T. This car has the exact same amount of power as the quote-unquote entry-level Carrera, but has a more stripped interior for weight savings. This is immediately obvious when you take a look inside and compare it to the base Carrera, seeing the more basic steering wheel and interior trim alongside manually operated seats in a model that is $10,000 more than the base Carrera. This trend is consistent among 911 generations. Performance models with less on the inside are placed above entry-level models and priced higher. While the problem of desirability and specification is an issue for enthusiasts who don't own the car, this complex is an issue for the buyers and target audience of 911 owners. Till now, I haven't mentioned the rest of Porsche's lineup excluding the Cayman. This is due to the fact that the 911 gets all of Porsche's love, as we know, and the rest of the model range suffers. All of the other models have performance versions, even Porsche's two SUVs. While the Cayenne Turbo GT makes 631 horsepower, this car shares its platform and powertrain with three cars: the Audi RS Q8, Lamborghini Urus, and Bentley Bentayga. It's no ground-up Porsche family carrier, nor does it feature a bespoke engine. It's simply a slightly more powerful, restyled RS Q8. The Cayenne sits on the same platform as the Audi Q8, Q7, Volkswagen Tiguan, and Lamborghini Urus. This is no surprise, as Porsche's parent company Volkswagen is great at part sharing. After all, Volkswagen has ownership over Bugatti, Audi, Rimac, Volkswagen, Lamborghini, Bentley, and of course Porsche. Unfortunately, the Macan shares the same fate. Thankfully, the Macan has a much smaller model range, not overwhelming with trims, but it too is a Volkswagen platform car. It is on the same platform as the Volkswagen Taos and Audi Q5. The highest performance model, the Macan GTS, does have a bespoke engine, but nothing like the V8 of the Cayenne Turbo GT. It's a 2.9-liter V6 making 434 horsepower. For reference, the Nissan Z, a 2023 model year with a $40,000 MSRP, has a bigger engine making 400 horsepower for less than half of the Macan GTS's MSRP of $86,800. This problem of power is consistent among Porsche's lineup. For instance, the base 911 has 379 horsepower at an MSRP of $114,400. The Cayman GTS has 394 horsepower, all while costing $95,200 at MSRP. Then, you get a mid-engine coupe or cabriolet with more power for $19,200 less. Next up, the Taycan. Very new introduction to Porsche's lineup, the very customizable and luxurious EV can range all the way up to $194,900 with the Taycan Turbo S. It also offers many body styles and options and boasts 750 horsepower. Enter the Tesla Model S Plaid. $86,410 cheaper, 270 more horsepower, and 118 more miles of range. Say what you will about the value of the manufacturer badge, but the Taycan simply fails to compete with performance EVs at its price points. Even the Kia EV6 GT is very close in power to the Taycan Turbo S and costs nearly a third of the price. Lastly, the Panamera. It has its place in the sports sedan world. It is a little pricey, but the 690 horsepower Panamera Turbo S, E-Hybrid, and Turbo S are simply fast in their segment, heavily rivaling the BMW M5 CS and the Mercedes GT63 S 4-door coupe. However, once more, the Panamera Turbo S shares an engine with the Cayenne Turbo GT, and the Panamera 4S has the same 2.9-liter V6 as the Macan GTS. Again, Volkswagen part sharing made the Panamera less unique, bespoke, and special by having it powered by the same motor as its SUV cousins. Now, I am not saying that these are bad cars, because by no means are they. The Cayenne Turbo GT is one of the fastest SUVs on the market today. The Macan GTS provides a great mix of practicality and sportiness at a decent value secondhand, and the Panamera was a very viable executive performance sedan for years on end. And by now, you know that I think very highly of the Cayman, but it is perpetually bound by Porsche's rules. But they do have integral factors that contribute to Porsche falling from grace. Porsche's claim to fame has been the 911 since its beginning. Now, the rest of their lineup is either a side project or a cash grab that will never get the attention or love they deserve. What could have been one of the most legendary cars to grace this earth was held back because of its older brother, and now the Cayman won't quite reach its real potential. The GT4 RS will never be the car to take back Porsche's victory, as only the 911 will carry on in the future, alongside the unattainable supercars they will make like the Mission X. All 911s are still great to drive and absolutely brilliant, because that's what happens when you give the Germans one concept and tell them to improve on it for 60 years, but it will always be held back. The 911 is a sports car that was built on the core principles of an economy car, and not a good one at that. The rear engine layout was never meant to race like the 911 does. Mid-engine is simply better, as every car that races, not even just the Nürburgring, has proved to us enthusiasts. Porsche practically admits this by slowly moving the engine closer to the middle in each recent 911 generation. It's why you can't even see the motor when opening the rear compartment of a 992 and 991. The specialty of such a grand tourer will never be like that of its rivals when it has devolved to incidental details as the variants and numbers climb in perpetuity. It has been said that Porsche will save the future of enthusiast motoring, but now it looks like they will only do it according to their own rules. Porsche has gone on record saying they build cars for drivers and not collectors, but they have spent so much time forging the rules of what a Porsche driver will enjoy. We as enthusiasts are still grateful for the 911's existence and what it brings to the car scene, but such a principle can only go so far. All we can do is sit and watch where the automotive industry leads in the years to come, and hope the thrill we seek will not die out. We can count on Porsche to continue along their path and deliver the thrill to those who seek it. The world is better off with them in it after all.